the best ideas rarely come from the top management in these companies. It's the person loading the trucks. It's the person out building the stuff. So normally don't get to talk to those people in your due diligence, but post-close, when you sit down with a person that has been loading the trucks for 15 years or out digging the ditches or whatever, and the best question I've ever asked is, what do we do that's dumb? And the answers you get can change the business. That sounds so simple. It's not an Ivy League school question, but the answers I've found, have impacted the decisions we've made in the business.
Climbing up, there's a struggle, tension in the air. But the underdog prevails, we here to declare. To the top of the mountain where champions stand. Failures can't break us, we taking command. Yeah, it's a journey, climb to the peak. Scaling businesses, who it ain't for the weak. Growth is the game, we play it real tall. From the bottom to the summit, we rise, never fall. Interview the legends, success stories told. Risepreneurs, hearts made of gold. Strategies unfold, in the struggle grace. Hardship and challenges, yeah, we still embrace.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Risepreneur Podcast, a show dedicated to all the entrepreneurs, business owners out there who's looking to grow, scale their businesses, and ultimately exit at the highest valuation possible. Today, we have a special treat. We have a great guest. I had a conversation with Kevin prior to this. I would love to pick his brain. So just to let you know who he is, he's a serial entrepreneur, a founder of Sier Capital, which is, I found out, named after his last name, Kevin Ramsier. He's also experienced multiple exits. He's involved in managing multiple businesses. So his current portfolio has at least 10 businesses. What do you have right now? Yeah. And those are not small businesses. Those are 3 million and higher in EBITDA. That's the starting point based on my understanding. Correct, Kevin? Yeah. So let's say hi and we shall begin.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Perfect. Personally, I got extremely inspired by your story at the hotel. I would love for everybody to hear this. It really touched me. If we can go into that place where you were in the corporate world and decided to shift.
Yeah, so I started my career after college pursuing a job in the corporate world, which really was the traditional path back then that everybody wanted to. I always had an entrepreneurial spirit, doing odd jobs and stuff in the community that I grew up in. But I think the goal was to get a degree, to go out and see what was out there. I landed a job with a large investment firm, raising capital for their funds, and had a great career doing that. I had multiple kind of promotions to lead teams and manage people. And I had a 10-year career there. And I always say this, but I felt like I became a little bit of a victim of my own success. And I think a lot of people feel that way as you rise up the corporate ladder. You get the nice house and the nice things and start having a family, and you lose track of the dreams that you had when you were younger. I always wanted to own something of my own. And it was 20 some years ago, I made the decision that I did not want to wake up as a very old man someday and I really have a regret. I wish I would have tried this. And I made the decision to go out on my own and put in a 2 weeks notice and kind of shocked everybody a little bit and went out and made the first acquisition, first of many. I didn't have a plan to do multiple acquisitions at the time. And certainly back then I never heard of, or there wasn't a prevalent entrepreneurship through acquisition, or I've never heard of the term searcher or search funder or anything like that. So it was just kind of natural where I knew I didn't really necessarily want to do a startup. I wanted to go into something that had existing reputation and customers and people in the business that I could improve upon and scale out from that one market in the multiple market, which is what we ultimately.
2 questions. So one is, if you always had entrepreneurial spirit, why pursue higher education?
Well, I've asked myself that many times, but I think, I grew up with not a lot of means. Was a way out of the situation economically that I was in to think about. No one in my family ever went to college, and that was, what your mom wanted you to do. So I followed that path and said the first way to get out of a situation that you're in that financially is unstable is to solidify the position. And I think at that time, and certainly still today, people put a lot of emphasis. I think a college degree is a rite of passage into a corporate America, for better or worse, and not necessarily the path I would have taken now. I think I often joke with my mom, if she wouldn't have wanted me to go to college, I would have the largest landscaping business in the country by now. So I don't think it's a path that I probably would have chosen knowing what I know now, but I did, and I learned a lot from it. So there's pros and cons.
Awesome. And I'm sure she's proud. Yeah,
Yeah.
in either case. So then second question, I will preposition it, right? So you mentioned that you got comfortable after getting to a certain place. I believe something similar is going on with any business owner pretty much, not any, majority. Why majority? We know that over 90% of business owners never get to a place of making over $1 million in revenue. We're not even talking about the profits. So it's not necessarily a failure. It's just them probably getting comfortable with pursuing and going beyond that. So when you in that place, starting a business, thinking of freedom that you're going to have and the ability to do what you want, I guess people get complacent. What triggered you to say one day, you know what, I don't want to regret? Like everything is good. So why would you go and reflect?
Yeah, I had a mentor mindset one time. Look, you can make a lot of money doing what you're doing in corporate America, and becoming a partner and all of this stuff is great. If you have a pretty cool title on your business card and you make your family very proud. But if you want to build real wealth, you've got to own something and not work for other people. And that was the goal. I did not want my kids, and eventually grandkids and hopefully great grandkids, never have to go through what I did. So I knew that I had to go build something special in order to accomplish that, to build generational wealth. And that was the trigger that I just switched in my head, that we were going to find something and we were going to scale it and grow it and see what happens, and work hard every day and get 1% better a little bit every day, and look back after our holding period and see what we have created.
So there was somebody in your life who planted that seed. It was not just you waking up one day and deciding.
Yeah, I've always been very curious. I was fortunate enough when I did go to college to have friends, had parents were doing things more interesting to me. And I've always been very curious and asking them questions about, look, here's what I want to do. I want to do what you're doing. If you were me, what would you do? And being able to listen to people that have walked the path that I wanted to walk has certainly helped my life. And I think being curious is a great quality.
Yeah, I can relate for sure. So Kevin, can we now jump into a place where, right, around September of last year, I found out about the world of acquisitions and I started to look into it. I got a couple of coaching programs. And what I found is something that I never knew before, even though I was coaching some business owners, that as value of the business capitalization goes higher, the multiples that it would also sell would go higher. Why? Because of scarcity, right? So certain businesses of that caliber, I mean, it's not just openly available on the open market out there. You got to go and really find and put an effort to that. So what are some of the qualities of the business that one need to have in place in order to, first of all, raise the capitalization of the business, and then also possibly position themselves for first acquisition and grow through acquisitions? Because that's another thing that I found out, that opening new location is not necessarily the best approach. You might go and buy a competitor and go at a much faster pace.
Yeah, I can tell you from our experience, our strategy when we buy a business, typical business that we're buying and acquiring, at least initially, a lot of these are individuals that started with a ladder in the back of their truck 25 or 35 years ago and never thought that they would be as successful as they are today. Their children saw them struggle and build a business. It is very hard, as you're aware of, to start something and to make it as successful as that. I have a great deal of respect for those people. It was an amazing journey, and not that they're complacent, but they've worked very hard to get it to where it's at. And so when we acquire the business, we really spend the first year or two on an organic growth strategy. So we really get honed in on how can we grow this organically, that the owner might have had blinders on a little bit, or been too, I don't want to say lazy or complacent, they didn't want to take the risk to go out and try to open new offices or to go after a new segment of the market. And so we'll try those things and we'll get a good organic growth strategy in place. And then once we're comfortable with that, we really turn our attention to an M&A strategy. And in that strategy, this is where we might look to add on smaller companies. So our entry point might be a little larger, but buying a competitor or a vendor or something that might be in a different geography that we want to be into, that we can incorporate into some of the processes and systems and people that we put into place to get a little bit of leverage on the multiple, because we can buy those things for cheaper and our business is worth more because it's larger and we can add those on. We have found that has been very successful. Now, there certainly has to be things in play, and I think it comes down to the people. You have to have a mindset internally of the management team of a buy and build, of being able to support a tuck-in, to embrace a new culture coming into yours. These people have to be, I would say, curious. They have to be open and very, very good communicators. And so not every management team or business owner, I think, is suited for integration through M&A, buying companies and trying. They're completely different cultures with maybe two different ways of doing things, and integrating those can be challenging. So working with the management teams to set proper expectations around that, I think, is important. And then I think helps. The one thing that helps that a lot of people don't talk about, you have to have, I think it always helps to be in an industry that has some tailwind. So when we're buying a company, we get really comfortable with it. Do we think there is going to be more of whatever this product, whatever they make or serve, whatever they do we believe that there's going to be a greater demand for this over the next 10 years than there is? Do we have some wind in our sails to make this thing easier? Because look, you make mistakes along the way. Not every decision you make is the right one. And it always helps when you have momentum of an industry that's growing behind your back to help cover up some of those minor mistakes that you might make.
Just to make sure I understand correctly, basically, if the trend, for example, newspaper, the trend is going down, you would not want to enter such a space because you would be working against the trend. And even you could be like so good at what you're doing, but you cannot outdo the trend itself.
That's correct. And look, we are agnostic. We like all kinds of industries, but we do have to get comfortable about, we kind of like niche service industries as well. And we have to get comfortable that whatever they're providing to the marketplace, there's an opportunity to expand.
Can we go back to that organic growth part, right? So it's not going to be, in my opinion, just business development and let's focus on exposing ourselves to the market. Are you also like restructure on the inside, meaning like the back office, or that's already kind of in place when you get to that caliber company?
Yeah, we tend to have the support system, the back office, the infrastructure. We like to say the businesses that we buy are, I believe, underserved by any acquisition, by private equity in general. Like most of the businesses, we're buying an average of 5 million of EBITDA or 4 million of EBITDA. That's an odd size because for many private equity firms, it's just too small. It's not going to make an impact on their big fund. Although we're seeing private equity come down market a little bit. And then on the flip side, whether it's the management team or an individual buyer, it tends to be too large. It's something that might seem too big for them to pull off a 20, 25, $30 million acquisition. Seems like an adult number to a lot of people, and it might scare them off of that. And so we support those types of acquisitions, and we say that we institutionalize those businesses. So many times when we come in, they're still on an old accounting system, or the aunt or the sister or the daughter's doing the accounting. And so we have to institutionalize these businesses, and we're really good at preparing them for an institutional buyer to come in and look at them through a different lens. Part of that is the systems and technology and processes that you put in place. But the bigger part of that is growth. You have to get them to a larger size than where they are today. And until someone tells me differently, there's only 3 ways to grow a company. You either get more sales from their existing customers, right? You sell them more than what you have. You go out and get new customers is number 2, or you go acquire customers. You go buy a competitor or something that has customers and you expand that way. So I think people sometimes overcomplicate this growth process, and it comes down to those 3 things. If you can have a very good strategy around those 3 things, the business is going to grow.
Let's say I have a company and I'm not in a position yet to have that whole back office and whatever the qualities or like systems that big companies will have. To prepare myself for that, right? Like, is there specific number that I need to reach? Probably depends on the industry. Before going and acquiring somebody, is it something that like, okay, build yourself to this point before you go acquire, or don't worry about building this because whoever you're going to acquire, they might have all these things already in place, and instead of them rolling into you, you will roll up into them.
I wouldn't wait to acquire someone to put more efficient systems into a business. Now, it has happened before where we've bought someone and it might have something inside of that business that we never thought about, from inventory management or time management, whatever it is, that we would incorporate into the broader group. But we want to at least have that stuff in place before we go out. The way that to make an acquisition go smoother, they're never smooth, but less bumpy, I would say, is to have a lot of the systems already in place. You can absorb that new entity into yours, creating some cost savings and synergies there, and some upsell opportunities to their customer base. So I don't know if it's a specific size, but I would encourage anyone is wearing 12 hats in the business because they're doing a lot of the work. It might not be the best time to go out and make an acquisition. If you are wearing 12 hats in the business, adding another one that's an M&A hat is probably not going to be the best idea.
Okay, so business needs to be prepared, kind of ran without the owner himself, have the management systems and management layers in place to oversee the business before going out and look at the acquisitions.
Yeah, I think that is the ideal strategy. There's always exceptions to that rule, and there's 1,000 ways to structure these. You could find someone that could make a great partner for you in another part of the country that might not want a full, that would maybe want a joint venture or a partnership on things. But I think there's a lot of creative ways to go about this as well that could save some angst and frustration along the way. But you certainly want to be prepared with as much people and processes in place that can absorb some of this if you're going to go out and do it.
So can we name few of the traits? For example, like let's say culture is extremely important. What exactly the culture should look like to make it friendly to absorb somebody without much of a friction, because they might have slightly different culture? Is there like a makeup that would make it easier to absorb other companies once you acquire them?
From my experience, every business that we in, it's this culture that understands that no matter what we build or produce or serve, whatever service we're offering, our product is the people. The people are the product in every business. So to the degree that we can retain and attract the best people in our industry, that is the culture we want to infuse in our management teams for them to understand. And to understand that I think is paramount. Because at the end of the day, a great group of people can turn a pretty bad company into a great one. And I've also seen where, people that might not have that kind of idea of a culture, of a people-centric culture, can turn a pretty good company into a bad one very quickly. So I think that has always been our focus, and finding people that we not only love to do work with. It doesn't feel like work when you're working with these people. We've all had people in our life we've had that experience with. It feels like you could work 20-hour days with this person and go afterwards and, the next day break bread with them and their family. Like, that is ideal when you want to be around these people and you want to go do something much bigger than you could do on your own with that team. That kind of culture is very easy to assimilate into, but it takes the right type of people to understand and have a lot of humility and, I guess, self-reflection and self-understanding that this business isn't about them. It's about us. And how do we attract people like that into all of our businesses? That's really the goal.
So I'm going to throw some traits just for audience to see what we mean by culture. It's common sense, but not necessarily common practice based on what I'm seeing, right? So you mentioned one of your core values, curiosity, right? You just now mentioned humility, to be open-minded. To be open-minded and try things, you have to have growth mindset. To have growth mindset, you mentioned also communication. Communication is another one of the core values that's extremely important to work as a team, which teamwork, right?
Yeah.
That's another core value. So when we have a culture of growth, communication, accountability, humility, you basically attract and able to retain talent, and you build everything around the talent to position them not to feel like it's a work environment, to feel like they're doing something out of their desire, not necessarily engaging their willpower to do something that they don't want to do and feel drained
Sure.
at the end of the day. So they would stay extra if they choose to. They want to give everything they got and not look for that moment. I remember when I was at the corporate world, I was waiting for 5 p.m. to kick in
Yeah.
to run out because I did not really enjoy what I was doing. That's one of the reasons I left corporate world. So not to have that in place, you got to have those type of qualities. So it's not just for the business owner to have, it has to spill over to management, spill over to everybody else that's within the firm.
You couldn't have recapped that better, I don't think. All of this leads up to trust. All of these things create trust. And that is the most, we have to trust the people to take our strategy that we all agreed upon and go execute upon it. They have to trust upon us that we're making the right financial decisions and on the M&A side and trying to help the business. And so you spend, at least I have, you spend a lot more time with these people than sometimes you do your own family.
Yeah.
And, look, I'm not ashamed to say it. I love these people. The people that work for me and with us, they would be in my wedding if I got married today. Like, that's how much I care about these people. And it's an interesting dynamic that when I first started on this journey, I never thought that I would sit in front of someone and say that that's the most important thing. It was always about, we're going to build a great business. But the key to doing that is leaning into the relationships that you have and motivating them and making sure that you can accomplish the goals that they want to accomplish in their own personal life.
Yeah. I also see it as a positioning, right? You can position it as, hey, these are the company goals. I'm bringing you in. You will indirectly exchange your time for money. We're going to accomplish the bottom line over here, right? Or what are your career and personal goals are? How do you think you're going to accomplish this? By choosing this as a vehicle to get to your goals, how can we structure your workday, your goals to be achieved? So they would perceive it more that, oh, you in it for me, but indirectly the company benefits because for them to grow to that ladder, they contribute to the company goals and everything.
That's right.
So what I'm hearing from you is it would not make sense to go acquire someone if you kind of don't have that in place. Based on my experience, I see that the employee engagement, sometimes entitlement, clicks on all kinds of things going on that not necessarily would support such a major shift to bringing not few employees, you bringing the whole organization to try to merge them, for them to work together. Somebody has to be able to embrace what's coming their way.
That's right. And the only other thing, as I think through this, that I would add to that, all of those are super important to build the right culture. The one thing too, I don't think enough business owners really concentrate on this outside of their business development hat. We have to build a sales culture. At the end of the day, we are a growing business. And it's amazing to me how many businesses there are someone in customer service or someone in another area of the business or even a laborer that has contact with the customer. How do you teach those folks to bear hug these customers, to always be thinking about what else can we do for them? How can we add value here? Is there an opportunity to upsell them? So I think having a sales mentality and sales training and relationship building skill at all levels of the company are extremely important.
You reminded me of my trip to Zappos. When I went to their location and at the tour, they were sharing their culture. They don't have management levels, right? So every teammate, even in accounting department, bookkeepers, they're all trained in sales. They're able to pick up the phone and provide the support necessary and accommodate the customer. I guess that was one of the reasons why Amazon was attracted to them and acquired them, because they have very similar culture and focusing on the customers. But you're saying it's not just focusing on the customers, it's knowing how to influence, how to persuade them, listen to them to grow the sales for the company, to be sales oriented.
Yeah, exactly. Not being afraid to ask for large commitments from people that we know we can help.
Awesome.
That's the bottom line. And that can just transition a pretty good business into a high growth.
Also, then on that subject, I want to throw something in here and see what's your take on this. many companies set up where it's more like a socialist country, right? This is your pay, that's what you're getting. And there's not necessarily bonuses and commission tied to achieving specific goals where somebody can go and become a peak performer, adapt and like achieve all those goals, get maximum bonuses possible. What's your take on that? To be a sales oriented company, do you create incentives even for non-sales people, for their referral, for whatever they contributing towards that? Do they get something out of that as well?
Yeah, if you look at some of the complaints of good employees leaving bad managed companies, it's lack of communication. It's someone didn't see the value that I'm bringing to the business. It's no career path. I don't know. There's no way for me. There's no upside here for me. And so communicating all of that, and that means like if you're bringing business in and you're on the phone or in person with a customer, you can influence them to do more business with us in some way. They should be compensated for that. And look, I do think there is merit in having cross-training people from completely different departments. We just had this happen last month in one of our businesses that the field people that have certain things on their tablets that they have to enter into are like, this makes no sense. Why do I have to enter in all this stuff that we're building? They just don't understand. It wasn't communicating to them the importance of that. And so we had them switch for a little bit of time. And then our accounting department was like, these guys they never take the time to do X, Y, and Z. So they're both complaining about each other. You flip that and have them spend half a day with each one and sit in there. They get to know the person and they're like, wow, I didn't realize this is how important this stuff is, or I didn't realize how busy you guys were out in the field. And now I get it, why it is tough to find this time. How do we solve that? Where can we create some efficiencies to make sure that you have the time? And now that you understand what it's done. So just things like that too, of getting people to understand everybody's job role on the team and how important it is that if it's like a football team, I would say everyone could do their job and one person misses a block, it's going to ruin the whole play. So you've got to make sure that everyone does their job and they understand what the person next to them.
I love it. In my head, I'm right away trying to picture analogies. So this is more like relay running, right? So some get to the point where I'm a peak performer. I fulfill my functions for my role. Maybe we're that good that our department is amazing, but what about cross department? So when something is transitioned from marketing to sales, from sales to operations to finance, if you did not relay properly that baton, you call it a stick, the other department basically does not have proper input, and there you cause an effect. Everything that comes after that becomes fire.
That's right. And it becomes, if you don't address things like, I call them brick. You don't want to have bricks in your business because each one of those instances become a brick. And eventually there's a wall between that department and the other one, or that person and the other person. And those are the things you want to avoid to build great cultures in a business, is you don't want walls separating team members from each other and animosity and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Are there problems in every business? Of course, there's going to be personal problems, but you have to communicate just like they are in families. You have to be open, communicate, and have real dialogue to solve some of these issues.
Yeah, to have true respect and appreciation, you need to see what they have to go through if we did not follow through on something. And yeah, I see that. And also, it's interesting to cross-train for that. I've seen cross-training in the smaller firms because they don't have necessarily specialists, and they want the load is not that big enough to have a specialist. So what they do is they cross-train to have one person wear multiple hats and handle this. But again, our ultimate goal, my assumption, to get to a point where every position is handled by a specialist and cross-train if need to, for them to understand who they relate information to make sure that they get it correctly.
Yeah, I use the word the phrase cross training, and it might be a little more than that because a person in the field is probably not going to end up in our accounting department. The odds are that they're going to rise up out in the field and then become a foreman, and then we have a career path for them as well. But what it does do is helps them respect the other person's role in the business, and it helps them understand why that's important. They're depending on them to do something that is important to the play that we're running. And then also, all of these people are motivated to hit certain goals that are communicated to them and being more very transparent. It allows them to see it in a different light. 'Cause this is why we need to input all this so we can measure profitability on a job, which then translate, if we hit those numbers, that translates into real dollars for me at the end of the year or the end of the quarter in my bonus. So now they go out in the field and they tell everybody, they start saying, well, this is actually important. I know we kind of poo-pooed it in the past, but we've got to do it. And that becomes infectious around the whole company, that type of communication, just from one little exercise.
Yeah, this is awesome. This is like a crazy gold nugget. So Kevin, before acquisition happens, is there anything else besides having, leadership aligned, having the company goals, have all the SOPs, training materials, having the proper culture, proper motivation for people to follow through, have probably like training, like you said, career path for somebody, like to have a plan on how they're going to grow in their career? Is there anything else that you might think of that it's not written in books or it's not so publicly available until you go through pain to realize that that's what needs to be in place prior to go to acquire?
Yeah, I would say you want to model out. It always surprises me, or it used to, whenever we would add something on. It is hard. It's much harder than people think to integrate business. I would model out for a 20 to 25% dip in acquiring what you're acquiring. That transition can be painful and that learning process can take some time. So I think people walk into these with grandiose plans, and sometimes it does happen. Everything lines up correctly and it's a home run or a triple, so to speak. But I would encourage people to prepare for a little bit of a downside. Getting through a lull as that transition happens is something that I think is a natural part of the ebbs and flows of transactions. That makes sense.
Let me confirm if I understood correctly. 20-25% dip in the bottom line or in the efforts, right? Like I'm operating at 100% because of that acquisition. I cannot give to my current business 100% because I'm going to dip 20-25% to accommodate the transition.
I think it depends on the situation, but it could be a bit of both. And not that it will dip that far. I would just be prepared and model out something like that. I've always walked into something expecting the best, but planning for the worst. And so having a plan that if this thing were to drop 25-30%, what would that look like? And would we still be acquiring this at a decent valuation if that happened? And we've had situations where that has not been an issue and the business thrived from day one. But I've seen this happen a lot to friends and people that I know in this space will acquire something and they just are like, why did this thing fall off in the last 90 days since I bought it? What happened here? Well, you've got employees that are stressed out. They're nervous. It wasn't properly communicated to them. They didn't know they were getting sold. And now they're working for someone new that they're reporting to. Look, I think that people don't give employees enough credit oftentimes. It's a stressful job. If you all of a sudden, they haven't, for the most part, they haven't been in the loop on this whole transaction. And now all of a sudden we have a new ownership group and there's new people reporting. And now we have a new process. Their mind starts going to a dark place. Am I going to be on the chopping block? Am I valuable to this team? Where do I fit into this new place? And they're changing some things. So you've got to embrace these people and make sure that they feel part of the team.
I was going to let me go into that since you touched on this. So in your experience, because you went through multiple acquisitions, if you already have a back office set up, right? You have your fixed expenses, you have your front ends. If you're acquiring another firm, technically you don't really need their back office, right? The whole idea, you taking that customer base, you roll up into yours. Yes, maybe back office will need to expand, but probably not to its full capacity. So some of the people would have to be let go, right? So what that looks like, maybe, I don't know, also examples where somebody has to be demoted because you already have somebody in place. And because that is in place, how's the current team is taking it? Because they used to report to that person, now they're reporting to somebody else. Like what type of issues you see in that case? And again, people don't really talk about this because not everybody's experiencing this type of acquisitions and roll-ups.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. I think at the end of the day, you have to have a heart, and it might not make business sense to have, you have your CFO and now you're acquiring someone that has a controller and you have a controller and who's gonna, you need both of them, possibly. So we try to find situations where we don't have to do that. And at the end of the day, if there is too much overlap into you've got some folks on the acquisition that you could let go, I think it's important that a company does whatever they can to help those people find something and help them, right? I think that that's just having a heart and saying, where do you want to go? How can we help? We're here for you. And it's something that I think a lot of people are so focused on. Oh my gosh, how are we going to integrate these and grow this business? And, we got 5 people that we don't need that might not be part of this transition. How can we help them? And I think it's important to have a heart and listen to those folks and try to help them.
But it's also like hard, but at the same time, you have a business, right? So those are the tough, like, is it a common phenomena?
Look, I think for the most part, most people understand it. They're like, okay, I get it. But there's always outliers, and you offer, what can we do to help? And someone can just not want the help too. People have to want the help, or they don't want to talk to you, or they're upset. So yeah, of course it happens. Business is not perfect. It's this thing that constantly changes and ebbs and flows, and you got to kind of ride the wave. But it's not the best part of any of it. Not letting someone go, which we've had to do many times, not only through acquisitions, but just through poor performance or not hitting goals, or, name them, it's one of the toughest things for me personally in this business of having to let someone go. I've had to do it to family members before early on in my days, and it's not fun. It's nerve-wracking, but it's part of business that you have to deal with.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioning this, because a lot of people take a perception, I'll open up a business, or I'll acquire a business. I'm going to have freedom, work-life balance. I can do whatever I want. No, everything is hard. You got to educate yourself. You got to constantly grow, constantly try to figure out. Entrepreneurs, I think to be an entrepreneur, you have to be wired 24/7. Even when you with your family, I cannot help. I'm just connecting everything to a business. Everything that's in the business, I'm connecting to a family. It's like I'm constantly in that mode. And initially when I was not, I was kind of resenting it. How can you be so obsessed with work? You're workaholic, you got to have that work-life balance. Now I'm kind of seeing that there is no work-life balance. It's whatever is happening at that time, that's where you are. You just got to be present, be all in, just have intentions behind everything you're doing. So by the way, what's your perspective on that? Because running multiple companies and your attention have to be spread across the companies.
And on work-life balance, is that your question?
Are you wake up in the morning and I'm in a business mode all the way until I go to sleep? I'm constantly in a business mode, or you somehow separating things and able to, and see that there is a way to separate?
That has evolved, and I think that does for everybody. Early 20 years ago, I had no life other than this, of making sure that this worked. And I was lucky enough to marry someone that I was transparent and said, I need to change both of our destinies. And so I need to work a lot. And that ran over as we started having kids. My oldest daughter has lived in 9 states. We used to buy a business and move there, and I'd stay there for a year to build out the management team until I felt comfortable with them. And then we'd go do it again. And then as we started exiting some of these and had success, we could bring people in underneath me that could act in that part. So I wasn't required to be everywhere all the time, but still to this day, I get up early and I think about it. Even in our best companies, there's problems that we need to solve. So that's what I enjoy doing. And it comes down to, that is not work to me. I love working on our business. I don't feel like I'm working, and I can look up and the whole day has gone by and the sun's coming down, and I don't feel like I want more time. I want to do it more. And I've learned to separate that and to walk away and go have dinner with my family and go throw the baseball outside with my son, or go on walks with them, and take time off on the weekend. But that has always been challenging for me. I'm just wired to, I enjoy this, and I'm having fun, and it's like my only hobby as well. I think solving problems and seizing opportunities that arise in our businesses is something that I'll never do. I like to love it.
Yeah. What's also fascinating about, because this is also, people ask me, what's your hobby? Yeah, I used to go work out, martial arts and all this, but my hobby is business, learning about it. There's so much to look into, constantly learn, evolve. So on that end, I compare it to sports, right? What's interesting in here that business is a sport. It's more intellectual sport, right? What's fascinating that every sport has expiration date, right? At some point, you have to exit. You cannot continue because you would be considered as an old and you no longer can participate. But in business, the older you get, more experience you get, and your value as an athlete increases as you go. Look at Munger, right? Up until like close to 100. If he would continue, like he was continued to bring bigger value as time progressed.
Yes.
So yeah, that part is fascinating. I cannot wait. Some people like afraid of their age for some reason. I'm opposite. I would want to see who I'm going to be in 60s and 70s. What I'm going to know by then, it's a wow.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, but either way, let's go back to, I got carried away because we started on hard conversations. Business is hard. Whoever says that it's easy, it's not necessarily true. But if you're wired where you want to solve things, you don't even feel that it's pressure in a negative way, right? Like opposite. Because at the end, it's just a matter of time when you will solve it. So anyway, going back to that place when you're acquiring, right? So did you start with when you bring somebody in, like you're merging two backends, right? Two companies together. You mentioned that sometimes you have to fly out and do all this. I've been involved in acquisitions before in startups. Everybody had to go and move. I would always refuse to move. I think I was the only employee that would work remotely. That's before the COVID days, right? So right now, when you merge all this, because it's a back office, right? It could be in a different state. How did you see there were flexibility or to have two locations for back office, or you would require people to move because of the merge?
Again, I think it depends on the business and what we're buying. We've bought a vendor before that we needed everybody there to continue to supply the stuff that we were buying from them and helping them think through other products that they could sell that we needed and even our competition needed that we knew. So that was different and unique. But in the event of that we're buying a competitor in a different geography, I've seen it where we typically will keep the office there. Like we want a physical location there where we want to build grow around that facility. We try to not be disruptive at all if we can. And I do think it's important not to change anything for a while, like watch it. I have this, that I'm pretty passionate about. I call it following a dollar through the business. I don't think enough people do this, but if you look at a business and let's say you bring in $1 and you paid 7 cents of that dollar for marketing and you paid 8 cents for that in sales and you go down and now you got, at the end of this line, you have 15 cents left over. That is your profit. If you go back into these, if you look at a P&L and you really break it down, line item by everything that was spent or brought in, where did these sales come from? Who were the customers? And it's pages and pages of not a condensed P&L, but long pages of the P&L to see every line item. And you start again getting curious, like, why are we buying pipe from this company? Has anyone ever went out? We're spending a lot of money on pipe. When's the last time we went out and quoted this? And especially when you first buy a business, the answers are mind-boggling. We've used that vendor for 20 years. Well, you can save 25%. We just saved $500,000 here.
Yeah, because of the volume. Yeah.
Eating this out. And there is so much of that in a lot of businesses today that so thinking about why did this customer buy this? What more can we sell to this person? Why did they buy this specific thing? And just asking questions like that on every line item, you can transition the business pretty quickly over a 90-day period, just doing that. And so I like doing that at first before we're going to make any changes in strategy or anything like that. And now, we have CEOs now that do that stuff that we talk to them once a week. It's not me going in there anymore and doing this. I'm sure some of them think of me as like the old fart, but telling them to do this stuff, but I know that it works.
So again, to summarize, if I understood correctly, when you acquire, you're not rushing to merge. You try not to disrupt, let it be, and you're looking for opportunities because they've done certain things for so many years, they're not seeing it because they're too close to it. They don't challenge what's working, right? So you come in with the fresh eyes and you challenging it.
Yes. And not just watching and asking questions, not actually executing on anything, just learning from the flow of the business. Because you can learn stuff that you can apply to the broader business as well, oftentimes, and not making, I'd wait 90 days at least before I made any significant strategy changes or tried to do any type of integration.
And anything you cut out in expenses automatically flows to profits, and you're already making tremendous shift in
Yeah.
that area before. Okay, wow.
Yep.
Interesting. Anything on that, and that also not openly talked about? What other things that you would do prior to going into the mode of merging everything?
I think having the right due diligence team in play. So, the three big areas is you want to, develop the legal team that you're going to have with you. We've got a great legal team that we've used from day one, that third party accounting resource to do valid and review financials and make sure that those financials are correct. And then risk due diligence. So insurance and everything else around the risk that are associated with the business. Give me the red flag so that we can have a serious discussion about how do we mitigate the risks that we're walking into or eliminate them. And I think some people get really excited about them and they just kind of jump into it and we'll figure this out. It'll be fine. But you want to make sure that you literally cross all your T's and dot all your I's. So surrounding yourself with the right team of people, specifically in those three areas, that's another piece that I would recommend. I think it's pretty common, but a lot of people, again, like you said, it's uncommon sometimes to have common sense.
I heard of maybe because the deals are much smaller, more on due diligence with the quality of earnings and the legal side.
Hmm?
So on a risk level, does that mean you have to get into business and talk to management and employees, key employees, to understand the risk, or it's all like on a high level and you not really necessarily would interact with the teammates?
I would encourage the seller, the person that we're buying it from, to let us in as deep as we can. And one of the secrets, I think, is if you can get the best ideas rarely come from the top management in these companies. It's the person loading the trucks. It's the person out building the stuff. So you normally don't get to talk to those people in your due diligence, but post-close, when you sit down with a person that has been loading the trucks for 15 years or out digging the ditches or whatever, and the best question I've ever asked is, what do we do that's dumb? And the answers you get can change the business. It sounds so simple. It's not an Ivy League school question, but the answers I've found, have impacted the decisions we've made in the business. And not only that, when you say, look, Joe told me that this is something that we need to change, and we've just changed. Now everyone's like, wow, this guy, they're listening to us. People are actually listening to us, asking questions, and they're starting to implement the things that we suggest. That empowers people to want to go work hard for you and to accomplish bigger goals. So, but getting to those folks is probably unlikely in the middle of due diligence. So I've found asking questions like that to management, to people that aren't out in the field all day, that are in an office, you get some canned responses usually, or they really don't know the answer.
And it helps you to uncover what's going on
Yeah.
with the economics of that dollar, right? So you'll
Yeah,
know.
that's right.
Wow, interesting. How many, like again, because you had multiple acquisitions, exits, post due diligence, how many times companies get, I'm sure not everything like, oh, everything checked out, let's go through transition is good. Like all of a sudden you see inaccuracies, resistance, like how the buyer protects themselves to make sure that post sale in the transition period, things would work out in the favor of whoever buying it.
Yeah, we've had a couple doozies there, but I think it comes down to the purchase agreement, making sure that you have all the right. So I would lean into your law firm. I would also make sure that you get a law firm that is focused on M&A of the size that you're going after, because there's a lot of great attorneys out there that people have known their careers, or they're a friend or someone, or you went to school with them and you know them, but they haven't done deals like this. And there are some nuances that someone needs experience with. So I would find someone that has done plenty of deals the size of M&A deals, the size that you are going after, and know what to incorporate into those purchase agreements, because those can protect you at the end of the day if you find something that wasn't represented or that you'd missed in due diligence.
Would you want them to be experienced also in that vertical besides the
I
size?
think it would be helpful. I think if it's a very specific business and there's some nuance, and maybe if it's internationally or something like that, like there's a twist in there that you might not be familiar with. I think that's important. But we have found especially for smaller acquisitions that we're adding onto a larger company, those are traditional kind of business attorneys that do M&A understand what types of language to put into the contract.
Anything went to the lawsuit litigation in your experience? Or you worked it out through legal departments?
Yeah, it's you like sitting down and hammering it out. Hey, here's what was said. Where can we come to? There's usually maybe a seller note or something in escrow that you leave in the transaction to help negotiate that stuff if you run into something that might be questionable.
I have so many questions, but a couple of more, and because we're coming close to an end. When you exit, right, and let's say it was not a year from entering and exiting, like how do you protect yourself on capital gains? Like what are like common, again, just to create awareness, not necessarily details, what are the common things to cut down or avoid federal state taxes? Is there specific states you have to be incorporated in, years? How do you position to make sure that you not end up, because most of the business owners that sold did not do research on that, they end up regretting because they end up paying through the roof.
Yeah, I think kind of, I haven't learned any way to avoid it. I think you have to pay your fair share for the success that you experience. So I don't know if I'm the right person to answer that because we lean on, what have a CPA firm involved in every transaction like that and
No,
help us through that.
Yeah, I understand that part, Ken. But what I'm asking, not necessarily like how to avoid and not pay. What I'm saying is that is there a way to structure a deal in such a way that, for example, you're not going to exit all the way, right? Like you might have a seller note. Maybe you're not going to, maybe you negotiate where you would not exit completely and still have it. So this way, how would you structure it in such a way that would be like a common way to do it, where you would not end up just, I'm sure you
I
feel
don't
not
think I have,
asking. No,
no,
okay. That's okay.
I apologize. I think we lean on our third parties to say, what's the best way to structure this? Tell us what we have to do post-close so that we stay in line with all the rules and regulations.
Got it.
So I don't know. That's above my pay grade.
Same here. So we'll rely on third party. So Kevin, now that we came to an end, is there an ask that you would want to share with the audience? And if somebody wants to reach out to you, how would they do it? We will include it below this video for everybody to see.
Oh, I appreciate that. Normally people don't ask that. I speak at a lot of like colleges too, and your entrepreneurship and ETA classes. So I appreciate you asking that. Look, I would ask this is if anyone in your network who think, if you know of anyone that has a business that is founder driven, that they're looking for an exit and they're doing at least 3 million of EBITDA, we want to buy those types of businesses. So I'm always constantly looking for opportunities like that. We also look for operators. So if you are a strong operator and you have questions, you want to talk about your journey or anything that we can do to support that, you have something in hand that you're looking at, and LOI, or you're looking for investment capital, that's what we do. We support really smart people to go out and do what I did, to go buy businesses. So if you need that kind of backing and you're looking at the size of businesses that we like, that's what we do. So I would keep us in mind for that. And my contact information is my email address, kramsier@siercapital.com. I believe emails on our website at siercapital.com as well.
I'll include those. Would you want to include your LinkedIn profile as well?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll let my team know. Kevin, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
For joining. Thank you for your insights.
You got it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.